I am a lecturer in Maynooth, and I suppose one of the reasons that I wanted to give this presentation is because when I give my students exam papers or essays, sometimes I get some rather scary answers back from them of things that they have found on the internet that they think represent company law, and they've gone and researched and managed to find some given the example of a Venezuelan Companies Act that they are now trying to tell me applies to them in Ireland. So I suppose with that in mind, just to maybe give you some pointers on how to be a bit more accurate if you're doing your own research. So just before we start, has anybody in the room, have you had cause to go and do a bit of research for yourself, maybe in the company's registration office, or any research on compliance issues or things that you might have had to figure out? Or are most people at the stage where they're just thinking about setting up a business? Setting up, okay. Well, this is probably something then it'll be more relevant to you as you go along. So I suppose the first thing that I'd say, if you're trying to do a bit of research for yourself, one of the most important things if you're trying to do a bit of DIY company law online, is the first thing is there is a lot of very reliable materials online that will help you to understand some of the basics of, for example, Tara mentioned the different types of companies that exist and what do you think might be the most appropriate type of company to set up for you and how do you do that, okay? So there's a lot of reliable materials out there, but I suppose it's just to point you to where some of those materials are. And I think that the new passing of the Companies Act 2014 is brilliant for those of us who may need to try and find out information about company law, because now everything is really in one place and it makes it a lot easier for you or me without, any legal training or whatever to go and find out some basic information. Okay, so now what I was going to try and do was try to mess around with the computer and take you through a few websites, but I think that's going to be too complicated, so I've just got some screenshots. Avoid Wikipedia. Always good piece of advice for my students. You'll see, for example, there is a Wikipedia page on the Companies Act 2014. If you want to know stuff about the Companies Act 2014, don't go to this. Okay, go to some of the more official websites that will give you reliable information that I'm going to be telling you about. Okay, so that's my first point. Second point, make sure that you're looking up Irish law. So you need to be very aware that our legal system is quite alike, for example, the UK legal system. But if you go and look up an act of UK law, you'll get completely the wrong idea of what you have to do in Ireland. Okay, so that's the second thing. Make sure you've gone through a website which is showing you that this is definitely Irish law that you're looking at, okay? These might seem like kind of basic things and I'm sure you're kind of going, oh, well, of course I'd do that, but they're easy traps to fall into when you're kind of Googling things online. You just go in through a link and you just come into something. As I was saying at the break, I've just finished correcting 340 exams of company law, and at least 3 people referred to the new act that has come in as the UK Companies Act of 2006, okay? And this, basically 0 marks for that question. They're completely wrong because they went and researched and just researched incorrectly, okay? So, just if you're looking for some basic information, just think about, am I looking at Irish law? Am I looking at a reliable website? They're your first questions for yourself, okay? I think the best resource probably at the moment, and Tara, I don't know if you'd agree with this, at the moment the Companies Registration Office, especially with the new Companies Act that has come in, contains an awful lot of very, very useful and quite user-friendly information. So it contains, you can't actually see it now there properly at all, but it contains a lot of information in the form of leaflets in particular. So it kind of gives you information on the different types of companies that you can set up. So do you want a private company limited by shares? Do you want a designated activity company? They'll be the main possibly companies relevant to you. And you'll be able to get information on what those are and what are the requirements for setting them up. You'll also see on the CRO website the relevant forms. So it's reasonably simple, in fact, to set up a company in Ireland, especially now that we have a very simplified kind of paperwork that you have to submit in order to register a company, okay? And there is an awful lot of useful information on this website, and it has a lot of frequently asked questions on the Companies Act 2014 as well. If some of you have companies and want to say, well, how do I change to a designated activity company, or what do I need to do now? Okay. And this is just what you get when you go into the CRO.ie, and if you go into the New Companies Act section, for example, I would advise going to, there's a quick links section, and it gives you quick links into kind of really popular things. I can't even read this, my own slide now, but it's kind of set up in a reasonably user-friendly manner. The other good thing about the Companies Registration Office is, does anybody know the other main information that you can find on this website? So if you set up your company, okay, and you are, for example, a butcher and you're supplying a pub, okay, and you know, this pub seems totally legit and they're saying you're dealing with this company, but you kind of get a feeling, I don't know if this is right, and they give you a company name and you look it up. You can look it up on this website, okay? So you can get information on registered companies on this website, which can be very useful for you, even if you actually don't set up a company yourself. So if you're operating as a sole trader and you're dealing with companies, remember that this is one place where you can get information about those companies. You can find out who the directors are, where their registered office is, various other types of information as well. So can you see how that can be quite useful information for you as a business person as well, okay? So just to kind of point that out, and this was the relevant part of the website. It's forms and leaflets for use with the New Companies Act 2014, okay? So they also have, you know, if you go into the leaflets about the Companies Act, you'll see that there is literally leaflets on nearly all the aspects of the Companies Act in there. So again, this is quite reliable. This is a state body producing this information, okay? It's done in a reasonably user-friendly way, okay? So it's very useful, okay? The other place where it can be useful to look, and I think is going to get more useful, is the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation website, okay? So you can get, in particular on the Companies Act, it gives you, it has these quick guides, it has summaries of the Companies Act, it has the Act itself, and I understand there's going to be more guides coming online in the near future, and probably Tara will be able to tell us about that anyway. But again, this is another place where you can get reliable information on company law in Ireland. So if you're saying, well, I'm thinking about setting up a company, but I'm a bit wary, you know, what does it really mean to be a director of a company? As Tara said, the New Companies Act literally now has a section that sets out the main duties that directors have to their companies, and kind of sets out what they need to do, okay? And, you know, so if you're kind of, again, this is all background research, you're saying, I'm thinking about things, I'm kind of wondering what the obligations are, this can be useful for you. There are other useful materials available online, which I think are probably underused, and these are really valuable for small businesses because a lot of the big law firms have produced really good websites, kind of little kind of mini websites on dealing with aspects of the Companies Act and dealing with aspects of the regulation of companies in Ireland. And if you were to go and pay these guys who have written this to be your lawyer, you'd be paying them €500 an hour. So I suppose with that in mind, it's good that they're making this available to the public, that you and me, and they have helpful, for example, Arthur Cox are one of the big firms, and they have helpful kind of summary leaflets on different aspects of the Companies Act. So, you know, they'll have a thing of the different company types, duties of directors, the new summary approval procedure, the changes to corporate governance, which will be very important for all companies, big and small, because remember, if you don't comply with the corporate governance rules, there are penalties and offences there for directors and secretaries of the company. So I think this is a big part of the Companies Act, is to try and get more people and companies, people within companies, to be aware of the importance of compliance. So for anybody who's thinking of setting up a company, it's a very important angle for you to remember. Very good, actually, is I found a particularly good one, which was actually, if you're not into, as I can completely understand, reading huge amounts of kind of boring material, there's quite a good podcast on the McCann Fitzgerald site given by Peter Osborne in McCann Fitzgerald. Again, he's a complete legend. He knows it all when it comes to this stuff. And he's there and he gives, I think it's a half an hour talk basically on the key parts of the Act from a director's point of view. And it's actually a recording of a seminar that he gave at the Institute of Directors. So look, this is a great you can go online and get that for free, you know, in your own bedroom or whatever when you're thinking about all the aspects of incorporating your business. So I suppose this is really what I wanted to do, is to say, you know, while don't go off and say, oh, well, I don't actually need a solicitor or whatever, but you can inform yourself. And I suppose this is much of what a lot of today has been about, I think, and what all of the various kind of funding bodies and so on have been emphasising, is that the more informed you are, the more concrete information that you have, you know, the better equipped you're going to be to start up. And that was the little podcast there. And again, the McCann Fitzgerald writing website literally has little leaflets on, you know, how to run company meetings, how do you know whether you need an ordinary resolution where 50% of the shareholders have to vote on a motion, how do you know when you need a 75% majority. Again, really, you know, you might say, okay, look, I'm a tiny business, it's me. But, you know, these are things that are relevant to all companies as well. And finally then, I don't want to go on for too long, but just if you do actually want to, you know, something comes up and you get some sort of letter or something like that referring to a specific section of the Companies Act, it's handy to know where to look for that and where to get the kind of official version of it. Hugely easier now that we have the Companies Act 2014, because basically before we didn't have one piece of legislation that you could literally open and say, well, this is the law. You would have had to go and understand, well, that was the law and it was 2 words of it were amended in 1999, confusing everybody. You give up, say, okay, I have to hire a solicitor. Solicitors rubbing their hands in glee. So look, I suppose, you know, those issues don't go away. You obviously have to be able to interpret what you're reading as well. But just in terms of, I think it's important, you know, that you're actually able to directly go on there and inform yourself about, you know, what does it actually say. So a good website at the moment for this is irishstatutebook.ie. Okay, so if you go onto that, you can find PDF versions and web page versions of the Act, and it goes through it section by section. If you're referred to a specific section, okay, you can just go onto the website and say, okay, look, that's exactly what that says. You have to be careful with this because, as Tara said, it's the way law is. Unfortunately, it will be amended over the years, and you know, inevitably there will be amendments to it. And sometimes what happens is that what you see then on your screen in Irish Statute Book doesn't have all the amendments in it, so it gets confusing. So I suppose it's just to be careful. At the moment, it's brilliant because it's a brand shining new Act. It hasn't got any amendments, so it's very easy to look at it. And then that's just, that's what, if you go onto irishstatutebook.ie, all you have to literally do is go into Acts of 2014 and find the Companies Act. They're in alphabetical order, I think. And you can see this is like all the sections have little links going into them, because as Tara said, the other reason it's sometimes easier to do these things online, try find something in there. Online, you can obviously just search for a particular word or search for a particular section. It can make it a lot easier for you. Okay, so I don't want to bore you with any more details, but it's just to take out of it. You know, it is a little bit more accessible now if you've got aspects of company law that come up in your business. You can search for other companies if you want to get information on them on the CRO website. You can get leaflets and information on types of companies, what you have to do to register your company, the requirements, duties of directors on the websites that I've pointed you to. So don't be afraid to do a bit of your own research as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.